We did a live recording of the podcast at Henry Stewart in New York City last May. And it was because we had Creative Force sponsors the Henry Stewart event and we get a speaking slot. And we thought rather than go up there and talk about the Creative Force product, that we would bring the podcast and try to have sort of a good, interesting conversation with some interesting information for the attendees. But there's a little bit more laid back in the podcast format, which is a little bit more of a relaxed conversation. We had a really nice time doing it in New York. I think it'd be really fun to do it again in London. Yeah, so when we record the podcast, it's just me and the guest usually. And in front of a live audience, we have to really kind of carefully balance out giving them good information and a good experience, that we're not kind of like stopping and starting like what might sometimes happen with a guest, where we can kind of edit that stuff out if we have to. So we have a great guest in Josie Diamond, a studio consultant who right now is under contract with John Lewis. She's been on the podcast before and she's going to be phenomenal. So I debated if I wanted to give a sneak peek of the topic up front, and I think I do. What we're going to be talking about is the role of the Meizu in creative studio production. So if you're not familiar with like the Toyota way, Meizu is short for the longer Japanese word, which I have to look up, Mizu Sumashi, which means water spider. And this is an individual whose job it is to sort of facilitate the movement of product throughout the studio. And the idea is that they can see a lot of parts of the process and kind of feed the right product into the right places without pulling creative teams, prep teams, sample teams away from their normal duties just to facilitate that movement. So you kind of designate that one person who is kind of guiding the samples through production, making sure that all those things are done, and they kind of float along the surface like the water spider.